Hi, everyone. This is Torrie Behrens. We are going to get started shortly on our webinar on the user preferences configuration. I'm going to get my screen set up and then start sharing my screen with everyone here. All right, well, welcome and thank you for joining us today on the next webinar in our expert series. Today, we're going to be discussing the user module and the user preferences within that module. And they're designed to make your use of ENFOS more efficient and tailored to your needs. Most of our users set this when they go live, and they never really give it a second thought. We want to go into this module again and look at the options and make sure that what is set up is correct for for you. Some of our users even consider this something their administrators should manage, when in reality, it's important for each user to set their own preferences for what works for them. All right. So as I mentioned, I'm Torrie Behrens, the Director of Customer Success at ENFOS. I'll be leading the webinar today. And at the end of the webinar, we're going to do some questions, and I'm going to get some help from Alexa Russell. This webinar is being recorded, and you're going to receive it about an hour after this webinar ends in your email. This is also going to be available in the new tab page within ENFOS, this webinar, as well as all of our other webinars. Everyone here is in listen-only mode. If you have any questions, use the chat or the questions in the panel. You can also minimize your panel with that red-orange arrow up at the top. And yeah, we'll have some time for questions at the end. So, today we're going to be talking about the user module icon and, what's in it, really spending a lot of time on the user preferences submodule. We're going to talk about email notifications and action items. Those are the two really big ones that I think have a lot of impact to your day-to-day use within ENFOS. We've got, role suggestions. We're going to talk about the left panel, next approvers, and then some other items that are within that user module that you can really use and configure to make your use of ENFOS better. We've got a handout in the webinar. Also, it's under the handout section. And that handout is a training document to a lot of what we're discussing today, including some of these suggested statuses that I've been discussing. So, download that handout. I'm pretty sure it's going to come out with the email after the webinar also. So today we're going to do a live demo within an ENFOS test system. As I mentioned, right, we've got the handout that has a lot of notes in there. So you can use that handout after this webinar. But I wanted to start by really looking at 2 pages in ENFOS that I'm going to reference quite a bit. And I wanted to make sure everyone was familiar with these pages before we get started. So first here is our action items, right? And these are our financial action items. You can see this based off of your user preferences, maybe when you log in, or under action items in the drop-down menu under site. You can also see this is the page you see when you log into your ENFOS mobile app, right? So a reminder, if you do not already have the ENFOS mobile app, it's available for iOS and Android, so download that. The other page we're going to talk a bit about today, we call our new tab page. And you might see this page when you log into ENFOS. This new tab page is always the page you see when you open a new tab in ENFOS. And this has all of the tutorial videos, including the webinars. This webinar is going to be posted within this tutorial video section as well. So, if you need to drop off early or you have someone that you think would find this webinar valuable or others, please look at those tutorial videos there. Okay, so let's get into our module here. Our last icon up at the top, our user account. This is what we're going to talk about today. And this is really your user account and just for your own access, right? So the changes you make here are really going to impact just you, not any other users. I'm going to click on the Preferences submodule, and we're going to be in that module a lot today. I'm going to give recommendations, but be sure to make these edits to match your needs. And some of that might be trial and error, right? I want everyone to log into the system, set the user preferences they want, and if it's not working for you, go back in and make those edits. Admins, I know you're going to ask this. We have a way to import some of these settings in bulk, right? So I'm talking about users taking on their own user preferences, but if you need to update some user preferences, you can always do this via an import. And as we're talking about our client administrators, I want to say to all the users, be sure to reach out to your admins on additional suggestions. There may be specific items and suggestions they have based off of the settings and configurations and how they use ENFOS. They know this, they know how to do the best recommendations here. My recommendations are more general based off of role. And then, we want to make this screen even better, right? We want to make your user preferences and what you want to see in ENFOS even better. So send us your suggestions, tell us what you want to see, tell us what works and what doesn't work. You can give us that feedback here in the chat and questions panel within the webinar, or you can send that to your administrators, which we'll send on to ENFOS. We're always happy to get feedback. All right, let's talk about what I have here on the top of my page, and it's the email notification settings, right? And these are emails from ENFOS to you that are going to notify you of some item. Right, and we have lots of different sections here. We've got financial notifications, site notifications, including documents and activity, data, and then also compliance. So, I always say for the modules you're using, be sure to select the email alerts for those modules, right? If you're using finance, select your finance email alerts. If you make additional selections, right? Let's say I'm a consultant user and I do not have access to plans, but I use the checkbox and I say I want email alerts for plans. Well, there's no risk. You're just not going to get any emails because you don't have any action to take because you don't have access to that module. So there's no risk in having additional checkboxes. We have it, based off of the modules, right? Plan, proposal, and purchase order. Invoice and EDI. Documents and activity are within site, and then data is the data module, and compliance is the compliance email alert. I always say, right, select those checkboxes if you use those modules. In the handout, we have more detailed descriptions on these email alerts. Some of them, like the document alert, you have to be a contact in the site summary, and you have to have this checkbox checked to get that email alert. In the proposal, plan, purchase order, and invoice, you have to be a contact in that financial. You have to have this checkbox checked, and you have to be the one not doing the action in the UI, right? You're not going to get an email that an invoice is rejected if you're the one who rejected it. ENFOS knows, you already know that. ENFOS sends out 1 email per alert. So if you've got 10 invoices waiting for your approval, you're going to get 10 emails from ENFOS, right? And each one is going to include the details on that specific invoice. So keep that in mind. We have heard feedback about batched alerts, right? Maybe ENFOS only sends 1 email a day with all of the alerts within it. We're reviewing that functionality more and seeing if that's something we want to include. Production, p.enfos, is our live system, and it will send out these email alerts. I.enfos, or our integration system, that does not send out email alerts. So, you would definitely want to set these up in production. Test.enfos, where I'm doing my demo today, it can send out these email alerts, but we also have a way to disable these in bulk. So if you're a client that wants to do some email alert testing, contact ENFOS's support first. We want to make sure everything's set up before you go through the work of really testing that out. The reason we disable those in the test system is we don't want to send out email alerts when we're testing through some scenarios. Email alerts are sent out for transactions that are done within the user interface, like I'm showing here, or within the mobile app, right? Either way, those email alerts are going to go out. So there's no difference. A note on ENFOS is not designed to share user accounts, right? And that's for a lot of reasons. One of those are these email alerts. And you're not going to receive proper email alerts if you're sharing user accounts. So if you are sharing a user account, contact us here in the chat or in support, and we can help you get that sorted out properly. This is not for consultants that have multiple user accounts, right? And those would be maybe you have an ENFOS account for 2 different clients, right? That's set up and working correctly. Now, if you are a consultant in that scenario, maybe you're receiving email alerts for one client but not the other, be sure to check your notifications, not only on the email, but your whole user preferences, to make sure they're set up for both accounts, right? They're completely separate if you have 2 ENFOS accounts or multiple ENFOS accounts. All right, and I'm going to give a warning on this as well as the action items, and we see it every so often in support, right? Just because you don't get an email doesn't mean that transaction is not there. It could just be maybe your email alerts aren't checked. Maybe your spam filter got changed within your internal IT without you knowing, and all of a sudden these emails are getting blocked. Just because you don't have an email notification does not mean that transaction is not in ENFOS, right? You can always log into ENFOS and navigate to the node where you're expecting to see these alerts or do an advanced search, a report, etc., and double check. Right, we've seen some items where these emails might be filtered out, the transactions would still be there. So that's our warning to always verify within ENFOS. Okay, we're going to scroll down, and I can scroll down, or I can also use my section navigators at the top of the page. And we're going to start talking about action items. Remember at the beginning of the webinar today, we looked at the action items, and your action items are completely related to your financial transactions. So if you are not using ENFOS for the finance module, maybe you're only managing documents or activities, you would not set up and configure this action items section. But I know the majority of the users are using finance within ENFOS, right? So we want to talk about these action items and how they can be best used for you. We also have some improvements here, which you may not be aware of. And just like that warning I just gave on the email alerts, same thing with our action items. If something's not in your action item and you're expecting to see it, go back in and search it in ENFOS. It may just be that the status is one of these statuses you don't have filtered, or it's somehow not set up to be viewed based off of your user preferences in the action items. So always remember, you can always search in ENFOS for what you have access to. I like to think of this action items, right, as a filter, right? It's showing you what you need to take action on. We want to set these action items up so you get all of your transactions and nothing's missed, right? Nothing's lost. It's just a warning in there. The action items are going to be different by the role and the purpose, right? What you're trying to do within ENFOS. I'm going to talk about the 2 most common roles of a client project manager as well as a consultant project manager, and our suggestions on what to enter for your action items. First, we'll discuss an employee project manager. And ENFOS has made it easy for you. And we have this middle option in each one of the different financial submodules, right? The middle radio button for planning in reviewing and pre-approved, proposal, purchase order, adding projects and pre-approved, as well as invoices in reviewing and pre-approved. So that is ENFOS's suggestion for the client project manager for each one of the financial modules. It's most of what you're going to see, but you may want to include more, right? And we're going to talk about what to also include in the advanced filter link. This third option in each one of the sections has advanced filtering or advanced status options, where you can select additional statuses or different criteria to configure your action items. All right, so let's click on we'll do the invoice advanced filtering. And when I click on that, I have a lot of options, and you may realize that these are very similar to what you see under advanced search, right? So really kind of think of this as a filter. But as a client project manager, you know, I have my reviewing and pre-approved in as my most expected, but maybe I also want to see anything that's been rejected. Even if I do the rejecting, I might just want to see those rejected items. I may want to see, if I'm a gatekeeper approver, I may want to see everything that's waiting for the gatekeeper approval status. Right? So you can see as your user, you can use the statuses to make this selections. Now, before we talk too much more on these other status options, I'm going to talk about the consultant role, and then we'll come back to these status pages and discuss a bit more. So I'll click save there. Okay, so for the consultant users, you know, the option here for the middle button does work, but I think the consultant users want to see an additional, at least one additional status, maybe more. And I think that the maybe more really depends on how many transactions you have in ENFOS. So when I click advanced filtering for my consultant users, and I selected my proposal here, I've got pre-approved and reviewing, but I know my consultant users, they also want to see rejected, right? So I would absolutely suggest adding in rejected. I know my consultant users are probably going to want to see proposals that are expired, right? If clients are using that expiration date within ENFOS. Maybe items that are stopped. And you know, our task cost estimation status are proposals that are in the editing status that I have not yet submitted to my client. Maybe I want to keep those in there. And you know, as I keep going through here, invoicing. If I have a small portfolio, maybe I've got 10 purchase orders, maybe I want to see all of those right on my action item page. I can't do actions on all of these items from my action item page, right? But maybe it's a good way for me right when I log in to see everything I've got, and I can keep an eye on all of my financial transactions. So keep that in mind, right? And you can see as I'm doing this, it's very easy to edit these pages. So you can add more in and then always remove items if you have too much. Or, and this is kind of where I want to start talking to my admins, I want you to think of this as a way to review and to do special projects. And when I did a previous webinar, which was consultant super users, we talked about importing proposals and invoices in bulk. And in that webinar, I talked about changing your user preferences so you can submit your transactions in bulk, right from your action item page. So it's a great way to use this action item page to know some of the items that are happening, right? And to take in account special projects that you need to accomplish. So I'll talk a little bit about some of these other options. You know, we've got things like you can define change orders only, date ranges, as well as cost ranges. This is within my proposal. And I'm going to click cancel here. My purchase order would have similar options. Within planning, I have, this may be helpful for certain users, I have expense type and scenario type. So if you only want to see certain types of financial transactions on your action items, those are available. Be sure to keep in mind, right, just as I mentioned, this works like a filter. So you may be filtering out information depending on what you select. And then we talked about invoices at the beginning, but I'm going to go back to that page. Great, so we have similar options with invoicing. Some of these may be pre-selected. If I'm a consultant, I'm only going to see my own vendor company or the vendor companies that I have access to. Whereas once you're logged into as an employee account, you would have the option to select the vendor companies, as well as date ranges and pre-approved options. This pre-approved show all versus show only if not approved by me. This has been in ENFOS for a while, and it defaults to the show only if not approved by me. That's what we would recommend. This is for clients that have multiple pre-approvals required, right? So when you receive the invoice, maybe it's in pre-approved status, you do your review and approve, but it's still in pre-approved status once you do that review and approve. You don't want to see that transaction anymore because you've already done your action. So this show only if not approved by me filters out anything you have already approved. So it's a great option there. And as I mentioned, it defaults to that selection. All right, and again, back to that handout, we have more descriptions on this action items page. Okay, so something that's a little newer to ENFOS is what's here at the bottom of the action items. And we've got some options for you. So we've got our sort order default, right? For all of your action items, how do you want to sort them? And they're pretty self-explanatory. What is even newer to ENFOS, right? I know this from our last quarterly release, is we now have column sorting, right? So you have your default sort order. This is how ENFOS will sort your action items when you open up that action items section. But once you're in your action items page, and I'm going to navigate over to that action items page so everyone can see. Great, we've got column header sorting, right? The arrows, the up and down arrows. So when you're within your action items, you can use these column heading sorting to sort them in your view. Now, when this page reloads, it's going to go back to that default, but you do have this option for the column header sorting, and that's in each one of the different transaction types. Great. All right, our next is how many rows to show, right? How many rows to show by default? And again, on the action items, you do have the pages, right, where you can go through multiple pages. And you can define those rows, but here, this is your default, how many rows to show. Now I'm gonna give everyone a warning on this page too. If you're showing 50 for each one of these 4 items, and you actually do have 50 transactions, right, to show for each action item, your page is gonna load a little slower, right, because you're loading a lot of data on there. And depending on your how quickly that page is loading, if it's slow, you may want to go back to showing only 10, up to 10 transactions. Now, the more than 10, it's always going to be there. It's just going to be that next page, right? So let me show you again on this action items. I only have 1 transaction. If I had 100, I'd have 10 on this page and then 10 additional pages that I can scroll through. But that user preference allows you to see more in these sections. It's that 10 there. All right. So we've heard feedback on action items, and I want to continue to receive feedback from the group. on adding or removing columns. I feel like everyone wants, to add one more column or to take away some columns, this and that. So let us know what you guys want to see. Let us know if there's missing information in your action items that you would find valuable, or if there's too much information. We want to know, because we know this action items is very important for our users with the doing financial transactions. We also know, right, action items is what you see when you log into the ENFOS mobile app. Everyone knows, right, on the mobile app, you can do actions, right? You can do your approvals, reviews, and rejections, each within the mobile app. So yes, please give us your feedback there. All right, let's keep working down the page. All right, the miscellaneous section. Now I have this view active sites only checkbox, and I am going to recommend to almost everyone on the call, do not select that. What happens with this view active sites only is ENFOS looks at the status, the environmental status within your site summary module. And if that's active, you see the site. But if it's anything that's not active, NFA, closed, inactive, whatever, if it's anything except active, you are not going to see that site. And you can't search for it. It's going to be as if it doesn't exist. And every so often in support, we get a worried email, a call, maybe a text, right? Saying, my sites are gone. I don't know where they went. And we go in and we look at the user preferences, and almost every time, right? Sure enough, right? This active sites only checkbox is checked. And the user didn't realize that is filtering out their active site, their inactive site, excuse me. So don't click this unless you have spoken with us and you're very familiar with how it works. We don't want anyone to think that their sites are missing when really they're just filtered. All right. Date format, pretty self-explanatory, but please choose your own date format, however you want to see dates displayed to you within ENFOS. Now, this date format impacts what you see in the user interface. It also impacts your reports and your downloads, as well as your imports, right? So my administrators, keep this in mind, especially if you're sharing exported ENFOS files that you re-import back in. If I have a different date format than you, my downloaded date format may be different than what your user account requires for importing. It doesn't happen so frequently, but this date format is specific to your reports as well as your imports. Now, the exception to your imports, right, are your general ledger transfers, right? Those date formats are locked in. Those are defined in the specification. User preferences will not change that. This is more for like your site information report or your invoice report, how you're going to see those dates. All right, our CSV delimiter. So I know using Excel and CSV, right? In Europe, they don't use the comma separated, right? Comma separated value. They may use a semicolon or a bar separated value. Again, this allows the user to define their delimiter based off of the Excel type that they're using, typically unique by country. So they can change that. In the United States, right, we use comma in the United States and Canada. But if you have European, especially, they may want to change that to semicolon, which may make it easier for them to use ENFOS reporting and importing back into the system. Again, does not impact the general ledger transfers. All right, map provider. For everyone here, we will keep the option as Mapbox. The other option is specific for China. All right, let's scroll down to the login page. So at the beginning of this webinar, I talked about the two pages, right? The action item page, which we configured a little higher up on the screen. And that may be what you see when you log in to the user interface, right? This is ENFOS saying you want to see the action items page. Your other option is that new tab page. And again, when I open up a new tab, that's this page that we see. So it's up to you. What do you want to see as your login page right when you log into ENFOS? The third option, not everyone's going to see, the SAP Dashboard. Only some of the users will see that. I would only recommend this for the administrative users. And this is that SAP Dashboard that I know everyone has been receiving our notes about and talking with George about to track the SAP or General Ledger transactions and the progress on those. So if you want to see that as your login page, that is another option. But most users are either going to see the action items or the new tab page. All right, left panel. We're going to talk about left panel a little bit here. I only have one option, and it's to clear my history. And my history is shown here in my browsing history, right? And I can always clear that in my user preferences. But I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about user preference configuration that's outside of this page, and that's my bookmarks. And on the pages in ENFOS, you're going to see a little star here in the left. And when I hover over that, I get the tooltip that says bookmark this page. And I can use this kind of like a user preference to make my navigation in ENFOS even easier. And you can bookmark on different pages, right? You don't have to bookmark on just a single page. So you can see on my finance page, I've got an invoice list for a specific AOC. And I have a proposal list for a different AOC. Right? Maybe I'm managing 5 different AOCs and adding invoices at those 5 AOCs. What I can do is go to my finance invoice page at each of those AOCs and click the bookmark. And now that's going to be listed here on my left panel. And it's available for me to quickly navigate to those pages. Right? I can also do that in any of the modules in ENFOS, right? So if I use the site module, when I click that, I'm automatically navigated there. And I can use this on any of my pages, right? So I can use my bookmarks up here in this left section and bookmark all of my sites. Then when I log in the next time, right, I'm not using my search everything, I'm not navigating to my sites. I can quickly navigate to all my different sites by using the links in the bookmarks. So a quick way to use these bookmarks as a way to manage your own sites. Now, as we talk about the left panel, we've got our bookmark sort options. With a reminder here to please log out before you see those changes take effect, but you can define how these are organized, right? And you can imagine, right, you've got 5 or 15 or 20. You want to organize them. So you can have them by the way they were, when they were added, by their name, or the combination by added order and name for either ascending or descending. So again, use this bookmark sort for the best way to manage your bookmarks. As we're talking about bookmarks, just as anywhere, if you want to unbookmark your page, you just click that star again, right? And that unbookmarks your page. Okay, next approvers. So only employee users are going to see the next approver section. If you're a consultant user, you won't have access to this section. Next approvers can have, a greater approval limit, a less financial approval limit, or one that's equal, right? We have plenty of clients that have $0 approval and it goes to someone with a $0 approval, and it just keeps going down that line. You can always edit your next approvers in the specific financial, right? So if I'm doing a invoice and my next approver is normally George Burnett, but maybe George is not the right person for this invoice and maybe it goes to Alexa Russell, I can always delete the person in that one invoice, replace them, and then do my review. These next approvers are unique by hierarchy and role, right? And that has not always been the case. So, you may be seeing this functionality for the first time. And I have an example of that here in my first 3 contacts. And you can see they're all my CR or purchase order, contract release or purchase order next approvers. And but it's different based off of the hierarchy. That's what's making each one of these rows unique. And Sandeep is my next approver in Hawaii and Connecticut, whereas George is my next approver in Illinois. So, so you can use your next approvers with your hierarchy to make them unique. And the other thing that makes the row unique is the role, right? And you can see for my invoice, I've got somebody else. I have Alexa Russell here as my invoice next approver. This works hand in hand with the approval limit groups you're assigned. And that's something that your administrative team adds and manages. Within the approval limit groups, just a reminder, there are settings associated with those limit groups. Those have hierarchy, expense type, currency, and the financial type, right? Plans, purchase orders, invoices. So you can use the limit group setup in conjunction with your next approvers. It's a lot of really great functionality. I do have a note within the handout on the alternate and assistant approvers. Be sure what you standardly use is the next approver. We don't recommend using assistant approver, but alternate approver is an example of if you're on extended leave, like let's say you're taking parental leave and you want everything that normally goes to you to just be rerouted to someone else. You can use this alternate approver and ENFOS will do that rerouting. All right, last section on this page, history. You can see ENFOS records all the history changes. One thing you don't see on this page is a save button. And anyone who had sat in my training from previous times, they know I always reminded people click save at the bottom. Well, now when I make changes, the save automatically happens. I'm gonna see if I can get, there it goes. I get a little green pop-up letting me know that my user preferences changes have been saved. So I no longer have to click save at the bottom of the page. The only exception is if I click this advanced filtering, I need to make sure to still click save at the bottom of this page, right? This kind of embedded page here. All right, so importing this information in bulk for our next approvers, or excuse me, for our admins. We can import in bulk user next approvers, as well as some of the user preferences. That, like all of our imports, is found under the file import page. And we have next approver import and user preference import. So it's a good way to help out your users, or if you're adding new users to ENFOS in bulk, right? It's a good way to get them set up and going. For reporting, the admin report and the user download report are good resources on this user data, but we don't have what each user has for their preferences. We don't have a report like that. All right, let's talk about a few other small items within this user account module. A reminder, our help screens, right? This is ENFOS generic help. It's really great resource. You can search various help topics and click those links to get training documentation. You can search, of course, and we also see that information on the new tab page. At the bottom, there it is, most viewed help articles. Information, we've talked about this page quite a bit. So this is actually the page I'm on. Let me go to a different page so you can see. If I want to see that new tab page, I can always open a new tab in ENFOS. I can also click the information page, and it's that same page. Really good to see all the tutorial videos, your user admin, your admin to contact to get additional support. Log out, pretty self-explanatory, right? It's going to log you out of ENFOS. Community documents. Okay, so first off, I want to say that our admins, we've got a unique permission within the user accounts to access community documents. So if you don't see community documents, it's based off of user permissions. clients and admins, if you don't want people maybe adding to community documents or editing in the community documents, it's its own unique permission row. But this community documents, it's really great. It's a great location for our clients to add and store documents that apply to all users. Things like, user manuals, emergency response reports. However, our clients want to use this, having folders and documents within this available to all the users. So again, another great resource for help or getting support is checking this community documents folder. Supplemental help material. One note on the community documents, it does navigate you back up to the top node within ENFOS. And that's right, because these community documents apply to all nodes within ENFOS. All right, the last icon is your name, right? This is your own user account. Let me click mine. There's not actually too much you can edit on this page, but we're gonna talk briefly about what's on here. You can click edit, and you can always change your password, right? You can always change that. You can edit your name or your email. You may have more or less options depending on your access, as well as your address and phone information. So you can edit that. Changing password, you can click the change password. You do need to know your current password to change your password, right? Once you're logged into ENFOS. If you don't know your current password, your administrator can change your password. They do not get prompted to enter your current password, right? They just change the password. You can also always use that forgot my password link on the login page if you forgot your password. Reminder for our SSO clients, there's no purpose in editing your password because you don't use a password to log into ENFOS, you use your SSO, which is managed by your own company. So those would only be for the employee users that are using SSO. ENFOS, records your usage, your login information. It's available to our admins for reporting. You can see the limit group you're assigned to, as well as those user permissions, right? With all of the different rows here. I know not too many people dig into this, but each one of your user permissions is shown here. Again, you can't edit your own user permissions. Organization privileges. This is where you have access in ENFOS, right? What nodes do you have access to? Or maybe what nodes are you excluded to? Maybe you have access to an entire state except one site, right? And that one site is listed in the excluded nodes. Maybe if you're a consultant, it says, everywhere that ENFOS is listed as a vendor company instead of a specific hierarchy path or paths. So again, I can't edit this, even though it says edit, I get an error if I edit it, or I get a message saying I can't edit it. So I can't edit it, but it's view only, and it allows you to see where you have access. Next approvers, right? This is just a view only. It pulls straight from my user preferences, but it shows me who my next approvers are. And then of course, the history section, which just shows changes over time. All right, so before we open it up to questions, I wanted to talk about one more item, again, kind of outside of the user module, and that's the My Reports. And I talk about this in the reporting webinar, and I know we talk about this a lot in reporting, but this is another way to kind of set up ENFOS to work for you and have your preferences saved. And when you're in the Run Report page, you may set up a report to run. I'm going to just kind of quickly select an invoice report. You may set it up all the way you like it, right? Paid invoices last month, let's say. And down here at the bottom of the page, we have this Save to Favorites button. And this gives you an option to enter a name. And this saves just to your own reports, right? Nobody else's, just your reports. And now when I go to My Reports, I see two sections. I see my favorites, right? These are the ones that I've saved as a favorite. Here's the one I just added, as well as my history, right? And these are recently run reports. So now the next time I log into ENFOS, instead of going to run report, making those selections, I can go to reporting, go straight to my reports, and click run right from this page, right? So if you find yourself running the same report every time you log into ENFOS or every week, you can always use my favorites to run those reports a little quicker. If you are running the same report every week, be sure to use the scheduler and schedule those favorite reports to get sent out to you automatically and emailed to you without even having to log in to ENFOS. There's a whole different webinar on that. One last item, one more item before we talk questions. The left panel. Just a reminder to everyone, we've got this toggle the left panel. And I'm on my laptop screen right now. And so it's a little smaller than when I'm on my big monitor. But I can click this little arrow and it toggles that left panel closed, right? And it's still there. I can always untoggle it by clicking that toggle button again. But it gives me a little bit more space. And this is really helpful, right? Especially if I'm looking at a big table or maybe my invoice list, and there's a lot of columns. So use that left panel toggle as you need to get a little bit more space on your info screens. Okay, with that, Alexa, I'm going to reach out to you and we're going to talk questions.
All right, we do have a few here, so I'll just go ahead and start it off. First one being, do the financial email alerts follow the next approver workflow?
Yeah, great question. It does. Yep, so you're only going to receive an email for the financial that you have to do the approval on, right? If my invoice goes to Alexa and then Alexa's invoice goes to George, after I do my approval, the email alert will go to Alexa. George will not get anything until Alexa does her review and approval.
All right, next one. What advanced filtering would you suggest a consultant user use for their action items?
Yeah. We've got that in the handout. Let me go back over. Alexa, what was the financial type they asked about?
It's just for action items in general.
Oh, okay. In action items in general. Yeah, it would depend on each financial type. For proposal, pre-approved, reviewing, and rejected are really the ones that you can take action on for a consultant. And that's going to be the same for planning. And really pre-approved, you wouldn't even see. Rejected, you could take action on. For planning, new is another option where it's new or editing, right? Where it is not yet submitted to your client for review and approval. So it's still on you for editing. And then the last one here, advanced filtering for invoicing. Again, consultants really would not have any actions for pre-approved or reviewing. They would really just have actions for rejected and, here we are, new. Now, as we mentioned when we were talking about this earlier, you may want to use the action items to see things that are there, right? So maybe you do want to see all your invoices that are still pre-approved, even though you don't have an action on them, right? You can't, as a consultant user, you can't do anything to approve an invoice, but you may want to see that it's still sitting in the pre-approved status and has not yet been fully approved. All right, go ahead.
All right, can you sort the bookmarks alphabetically?
Let's double check here. Bookmarks by name, yes. By either ascending or descending, you can define those. Remember with the bookmark sorting to log out and log back in before you see the changes in your bookmark sorting.
Right. Is there any risk to using the View Active Sites Only checkbox?
Yes, yeah, don't use it. No, I mean, you can use it. It's I would say do not use the View Active Sites Only checkbox unless you're very aware of what it's going to do to the sites that you have access to. If you select it, you're not going to see sites that have that environmental status as anything other than active. There are certain clients in certain scenarios where it does kind of make sense, and that's why we have it there. Let me click this here real quick. My preferences have been saved, and then let me open a new tab here. You can see I've got this little indicator, right, with this checkbox. And when that checkbox is checked, it reminds me that the View Active Sites Only is enabled. But you can see, you know, it kind of, it's a small indicator and it's easy to miss. And if someone forgets it, that's really why we recommend not making that selection. I'm going to actually even turn it off so I don't forget. Okay, my View Active Sites Only is turned off and my preferences are saved. Perfect.
Similar question related to that. Can you show us how a site is made inactive?
Oh, sure. Sure. So I'm going to use my bookmarks and I'm going to navigate to one of my sites, this one. And in the site summary module, I can click edit. And I have this environmental status column. And when I use that drop-down menu, you can see I have 4 options. And really, I even have a 5th option for nothing entered. But I have 4 options, and you may have different options based off of your client settings and configuration. But in ENFOS's world, there's really only 2 options. There's active and everything else. So if something's active, we consider that site active. And if it's anything else, right, any other valid value in that list, ENFOS considers it not active. And then it would not show, right, if you had that active checkbox selected. Now, right, you can see these obviously are different statuses, environmental statuses here. So our clients may use these in different ways. In ENFOS, though, we see kind of active or not active. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, a couple more here. Can any page in ENFOS be bookmarked?
Just about. There are certain pages that can't be bookmarked. And I'm going to find one. Here we go. My user account page. There's no bookmark there, right? So there's a page or 2 here or there, but for the most part, every page can be bookmarked. Let me look at my activity calendar, right? I can bookmark this page. Any of my finance pages could be bookmarked, right? I know a lot of you spend a lot of time on that contract release page, you know, invoicing, and you can bookmark that contract release page for every one of your AOCs. Maybe you want to bookmark your data imports page. And so the bookmark is really cool. It makes your navigation a lot quicker.
Similar one here related to bookmarks. What is the difference between bookmarked sites and favorited reports?
Yeah, good question. Okay, so a bookmark site takes you back to the page that you bookmarked it, right? Maybe that's the activity page or the site page, right? Maybe it's within the finances, the finance module, but it's specific to that node, right? My reports. So this is a report that you run at, you know, wherever you run it within ENFOS. Maybe it's at a specific node, or maybe it's for your whole portfolio. It's any of these, you know, 90+ reports in ENFOS. My reports saves the report criteria that you may use as well as the report customization when it saves that report. So it saves that output. And then, right, you click the Save as Favorites. When I look at my report, it's columns and rows, right? It's not the ENFOS screens. So I could look at my one of my favorite reports here, and it would really just be a CSV file, right? Columns and rows of data, however much outputted data I get.
All right, last
But
one here.
bookmarks.
Are there any sorting options for other screens like there are for action items?
Yeah, yes, in our finance module. All right, so let me navigate down to my invoice list. And you can see in my invoice page here, I have column sorters, just as I do in my action items. And so I can use these to sort on this page. We also do have on this page, and many pages, we do have a filter. And you can use these filters. You can see, right, these are really similar to that advanced search page and your user preference page. You can use these filters to filter out the data shown on this page. But again, be careful. People forget that they set the filter and then they worry that they are missing an invoice, that something's missing, when really they just have a filter on and they forgot to turn it off. All right, Alexa, any other questions coming in?
Nope, that is it in our little question section here.
Well, if there is something we missed or you have a follow-up question, send those over. We can always reply back via email. We appreciate everyone's time today and we hope you found it valuable. Thank you.